Hi, I'm Christine Merle from the Social Emotional Learning Center at Children's Institute. We are here with module number 2, which the focus is on self-management. Again, it will be broken into modules A and B. Each are about 60 minutes long, so plan for that accordingly. If you would like to just complete part A today and come back another day to complete part B, you're more than welcome to, or you can plunge through and get through the whole thing in one session. Again, our focus today is on self-management, but what I'm going to ask you to really keep in mind is the idea of social emotional learning as an umbrella, and that it is not just a quick fix or an initiative or a band-aid that we can put over some of our possible behavior management issues. When we're looking at self-management, we're really looking at the idea of continual learning for our students and building their skills so that they can transfer them into every environment that they are in. As we begin today, we're going to start with a little Jerry Brooks to kick us off and his idea of social stories for teachers. So take a moment just to reframe yourself and get in the idea of self-management. Thank you for watching that. Hope you found it a little lighter as we head into this more difficult topic, especially as we talk about behaviors in our classrooms. I'm going to ask you to participate in an activity with your group. Your facilitator will help guide you through it. What we have for you are 6 Have You Ever cards. And no, they are not the fun kind that you may get at a party, but all are related to self-management skills. So for example, one of the cards talks about, has anyone ever set a goal for you? And think about what it feels like when someone gives you a goal, as opposed to when you set a goal for yourself. Which one are you more likely to actually accomplish? So take some time in your group to talk about all 6 of the questions, how you think they relate to self-management, how some of those questions could actually translate into your classroom for your students, and where you would see them being most effective. Whenever you see that light bulb as your prompt, you know that's when you're going to have an activity. So we're going to kick off with this one. Thank you for participating in that discussion. Hopefully it's helping you frame some of the reasons why we think about self-management as one of our competencies, and also why it seems to be one of the more challenging competencies to teach with our students. I'm going to ask you to really think about the challenges that are associated with self-management. In every district in which we work, this one is the competency that teachers most clamor for some more information. How can we get our kids to manage their behaviors a little bit better? So I would like you to go back to your groups and come up with a list of reasons why you think self-management is so challenging in today's day and age. Some of you may come up with a list of 10 things right off the bat. I'm going to ask you to pick your top 3. What are the top 3? And they may be things that you have no control over, or maybe they are. Your facilitator will help guide that discussion so that each group has an opportunity to present their top 3 and come up with that list of things that really highlight why self-management is so challenging. Okay, my friends, I'm hoping that you came up with some good lists and had some good, honest discussion, and you released a little of that frustration, because probably as you look through that list, you saw so many that were out of your control. So just to give you an idea of some of the things that come on my list as a classroom teacher, I look at things like the increase of technology. Our students are so plugged into that phone or to that iPad or whatever's in front of them that it does change the way they're able to manage their behavior. I notice in my own children that those quick videos, those vines, that constant stimulation changes their ability to be frustrated and to work through a task. I look at things like changes in parenting, whether it be scheduling our kids, 2 parents working outside of the home, kids going from home to home, things like that. It does make it a little bit more complicated when teaching kids how to manage their behavior consistently. I look at things like the testing environment that's creating so much more anxiety, not only for our students, but for our teachers. And sometimes our kids mirror that anxiety that we're feeling as well. I look at drug use, poverty, factors that are so far out of our control, but really do impact the way that our students have to manage their own behavior and then transfer those skills to the classroom. And I also look at modeling. Do students have good role models in their life that show them how to appropriately manage their own behaviors and their own emotions? Are they watching those parents on the sidelines who are yelling at referees at games? Are they watching reality TV where adults are screaming at each other in inappropriate ways? There are so many different models in their lives. We just want to make sure we're providing enough of a good, strong model of self-management for them to look at. So as we look at that list, what we notice is how many of those things are completely out of our control. And what I'm going to ask you to do, and you can see that I did, is put a big red X through all of those items that we have no control over. I can't control anything that happens with parents, with technology, how much screen time they get. I can't control poverty levels or if there are families that are experimenting in drugs or any of those factors at all. All I have control over are the interactions that take place in my environment. So I want to make sure that I am that good model for my students, that they can see in my interactions that I have with them, the interactions I have with the other peers that possibly are in my room, my administrators, my parents, the school community, that I am that positive role model for them, especially in terms of self-management. They can see me use coping strategies, such as deep breaths before any situation where I'm feeling a little anxiety. I have a mantra that runs through my head in any situation where I'm feeling a little challenged by behaviors, and it's I'm the adult, they're the student. And I try to say it to myself at least 5 times in my head in those situations. That gives me 10 seconds to calm myself down. I encourage them to use different mantras. I encourage them to have places in the classroom where they can go for a safe space. We do a lot of movement and activity breaks just to switch it up, get that blood pumping someplace a little bit different, and give them that opportunity to start to realize how physically they feel in those moments as well. So really what I want you to do is focus on those things that you can control. Modeling is huge for our students. They really do pay more attention to what you do than what you say. So please keep that in mind in your interactions because they're watching very carefully for those cues. Also, that idea of teaching rather than telling, and I'm going to say that a lot throughout this module. There's a big difference between teaching kids skills as opposed to just telling them what they should be doing. And you as educators know that difference. Lastly is providing that environment that is consistently warm, conducive, and positive. So even though my heart may be beating because I can't believe that student just said something so inappropriate to me, and in my head I'm saying my little mantra, what do I say back? Do I stay focused on providing that warm, positive affect with that calm, rational tone? That doesn't mean that I accept all those behaviors, but I really want to take that teachable moment to model for that student what is appropriate in those moments of high anxiety and high stress, how I calm myself, and how I'm going to teach them to calm themselves as well. So my friends, I want us to take a few moments to really talk about the difference between classroom management and self-management. So often the two get completely confused with each other, and districts will ask us for help with classroom management. I really want you to take a few moments to think about what are the differences between the two, and where do you see that overlap? When we look at just strictly classroom management, I want kids to behave the way that I want them to behave, versus self-management, giving kids those skills that they need to manage themselves. We do have some overlap. So what I'm going to ask you to do is create a Venn diagram. And in the Venn diagram, I'd like you to have 2 items in each category. 2 items that you see strictly as classroom management, getting kids to behave a certain way. 2 strictly in self-management that show kids how they can learn to manage their own behavior. And then 2 in that little overlap area. So where do we have a meeting of the minds so that they actually impact each other as well? Your facilitator will help guide this. Your goal is at least 2 in each category. However, your facilitator can bump it up to 3 or 4 if they would like. Take a few minutes to work on this Venn diagram. Thank you. I'm hoping you had some good discussion about classroom management versus self-management. So let's take a look at those things that are just classroom management. When we think about behavior management systems, as they're sometimes called, we are often looking at things that help with pro-social behavior, they help with academic engagement and keeping everybody on track with you in a classroom. But most of the time, a lot of these focus on rewards and punishments, whether they be rewards and punishments for the individual or for the group. So when we look at things like ladders or stoplights or sticker charts, that really is classroom management. They are also much more focused on short-term rather than long-term. So self-management is the ability to get students to the point where they're managing their own behavior, whether they're in your class or any other class. Or oftentimes the classroom management strategies we use, I'm only worried about getting through my 45 minutes or 2 hours or 4 hours of the day. In terms of things that I find just on that classroom management, tangible reinforcements. So when we give students that piece of candy, that piece of gum, that sticker, those are things that we use as a behavior management system. We're looking at using procedures without explanations. So for example, I had students that I wanted to keep away from each other. I literally put different color electrical tape on the floor so that they would have to stay on those paths so that they would never have to be near each other. That was my attempt at getting boys from stopping touching each other all of the time. However, it didn't really explain to them how they should learn to manage those behaviors. I just tried to keep them apart. That's behavior management, not self-management. We're looking at one-size-fits-all consequences. So if you work someplace that literally has the hierarchy that says first we do this, then we call home, then we send them to the principal's office, and you climb that ladder, that really is a one-size-fits-all model. And you know that there are students that respond so well to that phone call home, and there are other students that don't really care if you call home at all. So having a one-size-fits-all system doesn't really help them manage their own behavior. Lastly is that hard and fast rules. Now I will be honest with you, there are many things in Rural Kingdom, where I live with my students, that are non-negotiable for me. Certain language is non-negotiable. We don't say shut up. It's a non-negotiable. So for me that's a hard and fast, but I talk about the reasons why it's a hard and fast rule. We talk about the power of language and how it excludes people. So that little teaching piece, I think, takes some of my hard and fast non-negotiables and moves them over into self-management. I want students to know why some of those rules are hard and fast, especially for those of you that have safety rules in place. They have to be hard and fast, but let's talk about the reasons why they are in place. So let's talk about those factors that really are self-management only. And the first one I have listed is that individual behavior goals. We are really good at having kids set academic goals, but have we really thought about setting individual behavior goals? Not only for those tier 2 or 3 behaviors that we're seeing in students, but for all students. So some of our high achievers may need to set some behavior goals as well in terms of dealing with anxiety or stress or being able to work in groups and not worry about that grade at the end. We also want to look at individualized coping skills. So are we teaching the students a whole battery of coping skills that they could use and then giving them the opportunity to choose which ones work best for them? Are there moments that they can move to the back of the classroom and stand during class rather than sit, if that's what they need in order to cope at that moment and in order to stay focused with you? The last piece of self-management that I really ask you to take a look at in your classroom is that ability to give kids time to self-reflect and evaluate not only academic progress, but behavioral progress. Where are they feeling challenged? Where are they feeling struggles? Where are they feeling that they're compensating for some of these things and coming back and persevering through some of their challenges? That opportunity for self-reflection has to be taught and given by you consistently so that students can learn how to use that evaluation in all aspects of their life. Okay, so my math teachers, as we go back to that Venn diagram, we want to look for a second at that middle section and where the two overlap. And there are many things that you probably find overlap between classroom management, getting those kids to behave, and self-management, teaching them how to behave for themselves. In that overlap, what are some of the things we're looking at? We're really looking at choices. Every time I give kids that opportunity to pick which way they want to go, I'm allowing them to make those choices that help them manage their behaviors. And you will be surprised, the more choices you give, how they learn to actually make better choices along the way. We are looking at things like the use of personal praise. So I tend to give a lot of attaboys and great job and I'm so proud of all of you just because I feel like it builds a positive climate. It doesn't necessarily impact positive self-management behavior skills. Personal praise does. So specific targeted praise so that students start to build their self-confidence and self-esteem, especially in those skills that they find challenging. We want to look at maintaining that warm and caring environment consistently from the minute they enter to the minute they leave. And that includes those warm greetings and those personal interactions that we have with all of our students. We want to look at modeling those pro-social self-management skills so they do see me stop and take that deep breath before I say certain things. They do see me turn and do my little mantra in my head before I turn around. They do see me ask students, you know what, why don't you take 30 seconds in the corner before we have this conversation? Those are the things I'm hoping they pick up on. The last piece is that idea of student participation. So how much are students involved in creating your kingdom wherever you live? So do I allow my students to participate in creating our mission statement for the classroom for the year? Do I allow them to participate in creating my expectations or rules, as we used to call them? The more participation our students have, the more likely they are to build into that system of management and actually buy in and go along with those behaviors. Hopefully they're taking some of those behaviors and transferring them to other parts of their lives. All right, my friends, so now for the nitty-gritty. So settle in with that cup of coffee or whatever it is you're drinking. Stay with me for a few minutes. We really want to talk about what the definition of self-management is. I kind of wanted to start the conversation with you talking about the difference between classroom management or behavior management and self-management, just so that we could begin to see some of that distinction. When we look at strictly self-management, what are we looking at for our definition? The ability to regulate one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors effectively in different situations. So we are looking at managing stress, controlling impulses. I know you don't have any students who need any of that. We're looking at motivating yourself rather than waiting for those rewards and punishments to motivate you. We are looking at setting and working towards goals, and not only academic goals, but behavior goals as well. When we look at them in depth, if we were just to look at emotions, cognitions, and behaviors, so monitoring and regulating emotions effectively, allowing kids the ability to even label how they're feeling, more than just those four main mad, sad, angry, frustrated emotions. We are looking at that self-motivation, awareness of your emotions when you make decisions. So rather than making those impulsive decisions, thinking about how do I feel in this moment before I make this decision. Using self-control, delaying gratification. I think one of the things we think about when we talk about technology is that idea of instant gratification. So if I don't know the answer to a question, I can look it up immediately, and I am just as guilty as our students of using my smartphone in that manner. But we really want to talk about giving kids the opportunity to delay gratification and how that feels, and exercising the self-control that it takes in order to delay gratification. We also want to look at coping. How well do they cope with stress and anxiety? And are they expressing their emotions appropriately when they are in those stressful moments? I also want you to look at goal setting in your classroom and what that would look like for self-management skills. So sometimes we set academic goals for our students and say, by the end of the quarter, you will be writing a paragraph this many sentences long. But I really want to ask you to think about allowing students to set their own academic goals, as well as personal and behavioral goals as well. So if a student gives themselves a challenge to write so many sentences by the end of next week, allowing them to see whether or not they hit that target, celebrate that success, and set a new target, knowing that that long-term target is way out there for them in order to achieve. Sometimes those small bits of goal setting help our students develop that pattern, and they begin to do that for themselves. And once again, I'm going to ask you to really look outside of the academic realm as well. Are there behaviors that our students could work on that they could include as part of their goals, as well as maybe some personal goals towards hobbies and friendship and diversity that they could also add with those goals? Let's talk perseverance then. Because this seems to be one area that most teachers would agree they are seeing some big differences in behaviors in students. And when we look at that ability to persevere and be frustrated, what I hear from teachers is, learned helplessness, they won't wait, they just want the answer, their hand goes up. So we really want to start talking about how we get kids to be frustrated and know that it's okay to be frustrated and to persevere through difficult things. We want to look at that idea of expanding the amount of effort that students apply to things, and that I'm not just going to hand you the answer, but what's the appropriate way to tackle a new difficult situation, and then give them some of those kudos when they actually do persevere and frustrate through that difficult situation. So as we look at self-management as a whole, knowing that part B is going to be pretty much focused on strategies for self-management, I do want you to take some time to really personally reflect as an individual those areas of self-management that you find most challenging. Do you struggle at all with monitoring and regulating your own emotions? Do you struggle with exercising self-control? or coping well with stress and anxiety. So take a few minutes in your group to really think about and talk about, if you're comfortable, which of these you really feel comfortable with and which of them do you find a little bit more challenging for yourself. Having a good sense of where you are will really help as you go to teach some of these skills to your own students. After you've had some time to really think about where you land as an individual in this process, I wonder how comfortable you would be in sharing some of those strengths and weaknesses with your own students. Do your students need to know that you went through your own process in developing your coping strategies and your coping skills, or the times in your life where you felt it difficult to exercise some self-control? Would those anecdotes actually help them develop their own self-management skills? Now that I've asked you to spend some time focusing on your own self, I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes to really think about the students in your classroom. Where do you see their competencies are in the area of self-management? Where do you see the gaps or the lapses? If you had to choose one of those areas to really focus on this year, which one would it really be? So take a few minutes. You may want to work with a different group, possibly other teachers or other adults that are in your same setting, working with your same students, and think about where you see gaps, lapses, strengths, successes in your students in the area of self-management. All right, thank you for participating in that. Now I know that Part B is going to really be focused on strategies for self-management, but I didn't want you to leave Part A with at least one thing that you could put into the classroom right away. So what I have for you is some ideas on how kids are feeling. As an anecdote, I will let you know that I have a middle school child who is struggling, not academically, but socially in her environment. So at the end of every week, I ask her, how are you feeling academically? Give me a rating from 1 to 10. And how are you feeling socially? Give me a rating from 1 to 10. As the year progressed, we actually changed some of that rating so that she could begin to define for me what words she uses to describe how she's feeling, both academically and socially. In my classroom, I take that and I talk to my students about the language that we use in describing on how we're feeling. So when I say to my students, how are we feeling today? How are you feeling today? Or those specific personal interactions, I encourage them to use language to start to tie into how they are feeling. And those words go beyond mad, sad, frustrated, hurt. We actually create a word wall, much like this, so that students can start to learn the nuances of how they're actually feeling. Oftentimes, that ability to be able to say, I'm feeling this way because of whatever the incident was, allows them to vent, get some of that out, and really focus then on the academics that I want to teach for that day. So it really is part of a coping strategy, and it really helps students start to develop that language that they need to label their own emotions and manage them. So you can create your own word wall, or there are so many resources you can find on the internet to help you start building that word wall together with your students. As our closure activity today, I'm going to ask you to do something a little bit different, and it actually asks you to use a different part of your brain. So I am going to give you the answer to a question. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, and you will, is with your group to come up with 2 questions that both result in this answer. So the answer that I'm looking for is increase in self-management skills. Now you are not allowed to do the easy, what is the purpose of this module, as your question. You actually have to come up with 2 good questions, and your facilitator will keep you honest on this, that result in that answer, an increase in self-management skills. So your facilitator will guide you through. You have 2 questions, and I look forward to seeing you in Part B, where we talk strategies for self-management.